Sign up for Race for the Cure Sunday, October 10th at Waterfront.
This is the NBC Television Network.
1992 was the season John Force was lucky to survive. He not only lost his bid for a third Winston Funny Car Championship, but the emotional toll was devastating.
You don't realize what it was like to lose it after 2 years. It was like you didn't have a reason to go on, but we got the reason back. It was the fan response when I lost the championship. I thought I lost them. I think our following got bigger. It shows how they love an underdog, and I've been that. So we're back on top now, and we're going to win it for the fans.
That inspiration has led Force to this dream season, a third championship, a near certainty. But there's one race he's never won, the biggest of all.
If you haven't won Indy, you ain't done nothing.
Welcome to Indianapolis Raceway Park in Indianapolis, Indiana, for the 39th running of the NHRA US Nationals. Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Hammonds. This is the Super Bowl of drag racing, and today you'll be seeing competition in the three pro categories: Top Fuel, Funny Car, and Pro Stock. We've already seen track records set in two of those three categories, and the huge crowd on hand here today could be in for some more record-setting runs. The ideal conditions here are very conducive to some fast speeds. Overcast skies, cool temperatures. Now, to find out more about today's race, let's go down to the pits and meet Steve Evans.
Brian, you're looking at a survivor here, Mr. 301 himself, Kenny Bernstein. And I say survivor because we already have had a record of sorts set. A record number of favorites fell in round one of Top Fuel earlier today. Joe Amato, three-time champion, reigning Winston champion, he's out of here. Mr. Hard Luck, Corey McClanathan. Looked like his luck had turned from bad to good. He qualified number one. He too fell round one. A Supercharger drive belt came off about 300 feet out. Doug Herbert thundered into round number two. It appeared defending U.S. National champion Ed McCullough had regained last year's form. He appeared to be headed for victory until he, too, had Supercharger drive problems, and that advanced Pat Austin. But the biggest surprise of all, six-time event winner this year, points leader Eddie Hill, near lane, was no match for Don Prudhomme.
It's a bitter pill to swallow here, but what can I say, you know? One of those deals. That's why they call it racing.
Defending Funny Car champion Cruz Pendragon fared no better than McCullough, his teammate. They overpowered the racetrack and advanced Kenji Okazaki. With more on that, Frank Hawley.
Thanks, Steve. I'm in Kenji Okasaki's pit area, and he's the driver, as you mentioned, that just beat the defending champion Cruz Pendragon in the first round. Now, they're running a lot better this weekend than they ever have in the past. Jim Dunn, his crew chief, says that they've been holding back a little bit on the horsepower they've been giving Kenji in this car because he's a new driver. But he's been coming into his own lately, and they're giving him a power that may put him in the final round and make him the first ever non-North American driver to win this race. Kenji's just been having a fabulous weekend. One driver that had a terrible weekend was Paul Smith in his first round competition with Jim Epler. It looked like it was going to be a good race for Paul Smith, but as he approached the finish line, the car exploded into a ball of fire. The body blew off, and Paul fought for control as the chassis spun across in front of Epler. He was unhurt. And talk about long shots and upsets, how about Pro Stock, where Lewis Warden stopped Bruce Allen in the first round, Mark Powick in the second round, and now faces Scott Jeffrey on in the semifinals. In the other half of the semifinal, that father and son battle of Johnson versus Johnson.
All right, thank you, Frank. You're looking at Doug Herbert getting ready for second round action of Top Fuel competition. Herbert beat Corey McClanathan in the first round.
And Brian, Doug Herbert is driving a backup car. His frontline machine was completely destroyed in a high-speed crash with Topeka earlier this year. And by destroyed, I mean they couldn't even save the steering wheel.
This is Rance McDaniel, who knocked off Pat Dakin in the first round to set up this showdown with Doug Herbert. Here's a look at the point standings, and with Eddie Hill already beaten in the first round, Kenny Bernstein has an opportunity to make up some ground.
You bet. As we watch Doug Herbert back up here, understand that these cars make about 3 horsepower for every pound of weight. To put that into perspective, imagine if your 3 horsepower lawnmower weighed 1 pound. It'd be pretty quick.
Not bad at all. You can mow a lot of grass with that lawnmower.
Rance McDaniel, 52 years of age, out of Central California. Took a long time out of the sport, but he's back big time. Doug Herbert, well, just 28 years of age, an entrepreneur who operates his own mail-order performance parts business, flies his own plane, crammed a lot into 28 years of life. Rance McDaniel has maybe the most consistent car in the sport. The machine in the far lane, it just needs to be consistently quicker. The staging process, they're ready. And it's Herbert with a solid 4.92 second elapsed time at over 289 miles an hour. Let's go to Frank Hawley at the starting line with the winning crew chief.
The track's nice and cool. Looks like the performances are improving.
Yes, and I think, the track actually was too good for us the first run. And, we thought we were aggressive and only run a 5 flat, so we just take a chance. And, you can do anything you want. The track is really good. In fact, we need more. So let's do a little more next run. Thank you.
This next matchup, this is Don the Snake Prudhomme and the Skull Bandit. He's been here many times at the U.S. Nationals. This is his 26th U.S. Nationals. He's been here 26 of the 39 years. He will face Pat Austin, who has 4 alcohol funny car championships. He's never won a Top Fuel championship.
Both of these are resurgent cars. Both have failed to qualify several times this season, but have hit their stride here at the U.S. Nationals. Don Prudhomme, thanks to a new crew chief, Leonard Hughes, and the Austin family just finally learning enough about Top Fuel to be really competitive. They don't use any outside talent. They do it all within the family.
Don Prudhomme, he's the one that knocked off Eddie Hill in the first round. He has 7 U.S. National wins.
Pat Austin, just 27 years of age, from Tacoma, Washington, has lane choice here because he ran quicker in the previous round. His 494 to Don Prudhomme's 5 flat, and he hopes, along with his brother Mike, that they have Prudhomme on the ropes.
Cars moving into the staging area. That's Prudhomme in the far lane. Austin had lane choice. He chose the near lane.
A beautiful start and a beautiful finish for Pat Austin, hurting the engine, it would appear. 4.96 seconds, 280 miles an hour.
Prudhomme ran the fastest speed, but it's the ET that wins drag races, the elapsed time, and Austin had the quicker ET. Meanwhile, down in the funny car pits, this is Chuck Etchells preparing for his second round showdown with Kenji Okazaki. That nitromethane right there in that beaker probably cost about $10. Nitro makes up about 93% of the fuel mixture. Methanol alcohol makes up the other 7%. Now let's go down to the far end. Steve Evans.
Well, it had a ton of smoke out of it, but I don't think at this point you really care.
Yeah, something happened there. I don't know what I did. It felt really running good in the bottom, and all of a sudden it kind of stopped. And then all of a sudden something went bang, and I felt something going. And it took off again for a second. I don't know. This is pretty weird, but, it don't matter. We're having the time of our life. The Castrol, Syntec, Dynamax, Oldsmobile, Red Wing shoes cars going into the semis. And that's a cry. I mean, that's a lot better than we've been doing, so we're having a great time. We'll see you next round, guys.
Okay. He's forgotten how to interview. We haven't talked in a long time.
This is NBC's Sports World, and today it's brought to you by Goodyear, #1 in tires. By Budweiser, fresh, pure, natural, proud to be your Bud. By Allied Signals Autolite Smart Plugs, guaranteed for 2 years no matter how far you go. And by Slick 50. Starting your engine without it is a terrible thing to do.
Genuine and true, working together in all that you do, and you're giving it your best. Proud to be your bud. Budweiser. Proud to be your bud. Proud to be your bud. Ooh, yeah. Proud to be your bud.
Imagine this is a sidewall of a tire. The whole idea is to keep the tread area in level contact with the road, or you'll lose traction, especially in cornering. Now, Goodyear has learned a lot in Turn 1 at Indy and applied that knowledge to Eagle street radials. In cornering, there's a lot of force trying to lift the tire, but Goodyear Eagle's racing-inspired sidewall design works to hold the tire firmly to the road. Eagle radials, only from Goodyear. We like to say the best tires in the world have Goodyear written all over them.
Craftsman tools. Chosen the official tools of NASCAR. The official tools of NHRA. The official tools of IndyCar racing. Next time you need a tool, what tool are you gonna choose? 1,600 Craftsman hand tools, made in America, guaranteed forever.
You can count on me.
Only at Sears.
Welcome back to Indianapolis Raceway Park, the 39th running of the NHRA US Nationals. We continue in the second round of Top Fuel competition. This is the king of speed, Kenny Bernstein, celebrating his 49th birthday today. He'll be going against Del Worsham. And Worsham is in the far lane. Bernstein has lane choice. He'll be in the near lane.
This is only Del Worsham's 4th race as a Top Fuel driver. He also campaigns a Nitro Funny Car. We'll see later on. He's still in contention there. Up against Kenny Bernstein, the first ever to top 300 miles an hour, a man who has won here in Funny Cars and Top Fuel dragsters. And he was a lucky guy back in 1991. In the final round, his opponent was Pat Austin, who blew a supercharger. That was his first ever Top Fuel race, a bit of inexperience. And then Austin watched in agony as Kenny Bernstein lost traction. He would have been an easy mark. So Bernstein coasted to his first Top Fuel U.S. Nationals title in '91.
You can see Kenny Bernstein's crew chief, Dale Armstrong, guide him into the staging area. And there's Del Worsham.
Worsham did not have lane choice. That went to Bernstein. He selected the near lane. That has been the favored lane. And Worsham leaves too soon. A red light. He is whoa, and Kenny Bernstein. A horrific engine explosion. Driving in his own oil. Kenny's car is equipped with a diaper-like bag under the engine that is containing most of the air it parts and a lot of the oil. Let's go to Frank.
You had some problems, but you're in the semis. Can you fix it and get it straightened out?
Oh, we'll fix it. I guarantee you we'll be back. But it's surprising. It looked like it was on a real good run. We'll just have to look at it.
Any idea what might have happened?
Not at all, Frank.
Well, Frank, when Dale gets down here, he's not going to like what he's going to see because Kenny Bernstein is A-OK, no problem there. But the engine, it broke a connecting rod and has punched a giant hole in the side of a very expensive aluminum racing power plant.
Take a look at the replay. Now remember, Worsham had red lighted. Bernstein didn't know that. He stayed in it, and you can see right there where it broke. And that was a very expensive explosion, leaving Dale Armstrong and crew an awful lot of work to do before the next round.
The last time Kenny Bernstein had an explosion like that, he crashed hard at the Pomona Winter Nationals.
This is our last race in the second round of Top Fuel. You're looking at Scott Coletta. He has lane choice. He'll be in the near lane. And he'll be facing Jim Head. Coletta beat Joe Amato in the first round. Head beat Jimmy Nix.
Most people feel it's just a matter of time before Scott Coletta wins a drag race. He has qualified #1 6 times this season and was the #2 qualifier here to Corey McClanahan out of Ypsilanti, Michigan. Jim Head and Scott Coletta come into this round virtually a tie on paper anyway, a 497 to a 498 in the previous round. Coletta does have the lane choice and as about everybody else has, selects the near side.
Very delicate staging process. Head is pre-staged. Now Coletta, they're ready to race.
Oh, and there you see the Coletta performance I was talking about. The first car in this round to dip into the 480s, 488 and 286 miles an hour. Frank Hawley is with the crew chief, Dick LaHaye.
Track conditions look like they're great. The car's running good. What do you think?
Well, I think we're going to try to win us a race here, Frank. You know, it's just, we've been struggling all weekend. We went out there and qualified real well, and then yesterday there was a couple smoke the tires deal. And first round we had it real soft, and now we're back on our game plan, and I think we're going to be just fine. Thank you.
So we're now down to the final 4 in Top Fuel competition, and here's how they'll line up. Pat Austin against Scott Coletta in one race. Coletta has the lane choice in that matchup. And then Doug Herbert against Kenny Bernstein. Herbert will have lane choice in that race.
It is time for round #2 of the funny car category. They make the same kind of noise because they use the same kind of engines as the Top Fuel dragsters, only in front of the driver, much shorter wheelbase, carbon fiber bodies, much like Detroit automobiles, and they do fantastic burnouts.
And the purpose of those burnouts, they heat up those big slicks, they heat up the racetrack, and the crowd loves them. And here's a look at the funny car point standing. John Force has a huge lead. Cruz Pedregon has already been beaten here today. By the way, Jim Epler is currently 11th in points. Freddie Neely runs so very few races that he's really lucky to be in the top 20.
And that was Dick Brown, Freddie Neely's car owner. Even though they don't run all that often, they're the world's fastest funny car. They hold the national record at 295 miles per hour. Young crew chief Ronnie Swearingen, responsible for that speed, carefully lining Freddie Neely up. Freddie from Georgia qualified number 2 at 5:17. And this man, Jim Epler, well, he qualified number 7, and he was the guy just behind Paul Smith in that terrible crash we showed you at the top of the show. So here they are, side by side. Neely in the near lane, Epler out of Vancouver, Washington, in the far lane.
And you may have noticed a couple of spots on our camera lens. We're starting to get a few drops of rain, but so far, nothing serious enough to shut things down.
Oh, and Freddie Neely, the number 2 qualifier, got over anxious at the starting line. He left too soon. A red light, he's disqualified. Epler saw it and just coasted down the racetrack to save his part for the semifinal round.
We'll be back with more funny car action, including our first look at John Force after this.
In IndyCar racing, when it rains, we don't race on super speedways. But we're running this IndyCar on Goodyear Eagle GSC street radials to prove a point. What's the point? Outstanding wet traction. Eagle GSC, only from Goodyear.
One of these engines was filled with Castrol Syntec, a synthetic oil, the rest with conventional oils. They were then drained and started without oil to prove a point. You see, Syntec has a unique molecular structure that bonds to engine parts. Lab tests show it leaves a layer of protection far stronger than conventional oils. And if Syntec protects this well now, imagine if you leave it in. Castrol Syntec protects in ways other oils can't.
Simply brilliant.
We're behind the Slick 50 racing team all the way, but then so is most everyone else. For the car you drive, for the way you drive. Slick 50, high performance engine formula.
Next Saturday, one of college football's greatest rivalries is renewed when the Fighting Irish battle Michigan State. Notre Dame football is home on NBC.
Welcome back to Indianapolis. This is Doug Herbert's crew working feverishly on his top fuel dragster. But remember, his opponent in the semifinals is Kenny Bernstein, and that crew has an awful lot of work to do. Here's Frank Hawley with more on that.
In the last round of competition, Kenny Bernstein fell off of his 4-second performance with a 5.01 second run, and this is why it slowed down. Look at the hole in this block. Dale Armstrong tells me that it burnt the piston, and then it broke the connecting rod and just ventilated this block. A very costly problem. But they put a new engine in. Armstrong feels that the reason this piston burnt was because the atmospheric conditions were much better, and he had left the engine combination the same as the round before. For this run, in the new engine, they've lowered the compression ratio in that cylinder only, which should make it go back into the 4s and win in the semifinals.
And Brian, that engine block is a complete write-off, about $7,000 worth.
So here at Indianapolis Raceway Park, we continue with second round action in the funny car competition. Kenji Okazaki in the far lane against Chuck Etchells, who had lane joints.
And what a pleasant surprise Kenji has been. He debuted as a funny car driver 1 year ago here in this Jim Dunn-owned car, failed to qualify, and here he is in the second round. He should be smiling. His opponent, Chuck Etchells, had a fantastic first-round performance at 5.19 seconds, so he obviously has the lane choices compared to Kenji's 5.31. Kenji may have met more than his match here, Brian, if they run according to form.
Okazaki, the first Japanese driver to be licensed by the NHRA.
Whoa! Etchels has problems, and Kenji Okazaki goes to the Final Four, and his performance improves tremendously. A 5:24 at 276 miles an hour. Not a lot of speed, but a competitive elapsed time.
So another upset here at the U.S. Nationals. And here is our first look at the #1 qualifier, John Force. And look how long the burnout is. The crowd loves it, but I'm not too sure his crew chief is going to be real appreciative of that. It is very hard on parts. Force's opponent here in the second round is Mark Oswald. For more on the Kenji Okazaki story, here's Steve.
Well, Kenji, this one was worth the long trip across the Pacific. Hang on now. 5:24.
Really? That's a good number. I like that. I mean, Jim liked that number too. He was working on that motor so hard. I mean, we just proved the Moon Eyes, Blue Panic, that's Daytona was the Yoshinoya this time. Real good. And then we go in the semi, we're going to beat someone else, whoever, this time.
Have you noticed how many fans are cheering for you here?
No.
A lot of them.
All right. Okay, thank you very much, people.
What a great story this guy is. Only the third time he's ever been in a semi.
Well, I tell you, Mark Oswald is a journeyman race car driver and not one that John Force will take lightly. In fact, Oswald qualified right in the middle of the pack, the 5:26, beat Gary Saloni in round number 1. Mark has been a Winston champion in the past. He's driving a car with a lot of horsepower. Managing the power has been the problem. John Force, we just saw that long, smoky burnout, the most aggressive one we've seen in a long time from John Force, and you will have the pleasure of riding with him. You and John Force just won here in the second round at the U.S. Nationals. A stunning 5:16 elapsed time at 286 miles an hour. Oswald was in it most of the way at a very competitive 5:23. So John Force moves to the Final Four.
This is Al Hoffman preparing for his burnout. He'll take on Del Worsham in the second round race here. Hoffman has lane choice, and like everybody else who has lane choice, has chosen the near lane. Worsham, you saw him lose just a little bit earlier in Top Fuel. He's back now in his funny car. Well, it was a great run for John Force, and Steve Evans has caught up with him.
John, absolutely flawless 5:16.
Well, we're pretty excited. A little scary on the burnout out there. The brakes went away on it, and I was really having to be careful, trying to hold her backing up and coming up to the tree. But she ran a good number when I clicked her, that like a caliper come off in the back. Might have been trying to lock it up, but we did our job even on the rain. They kept the track right. That's what matters.
Easily fixed.
And that may be why we saw the long burnout from John Force. This is Al Hoffman's crew chief, Tom Anderson, getting the fuel pressure gauge out to check it on Al Hoffman's car as he gets ready for Del Worsham.
Del Worsham, still in his early 20s, was runner-up to Cruz Pedregon here a year ago. He qualified number 12 at a 5:28 to beat Gordon Minio in round number 1. Now, Al Hoffman, who has been a world beater in previous seasons, has been down in a valley trying to climb up onto the peak again, and he qualified number 4 to 5:21. He whipped Whit Bazemore in round number 1. That is virtually a new automobile. Al Hoffman, who finished number 3 in points. That's what the number indicates on the windows of these cars. Whoa! And Al Hoffman says, John Force, I'm over here. 5:17 at 286 miles per hour.
Well, he's going to get Force as we look at the semifinal pairings for the funny car competition. Force has lane choice, but not by much. In the second pairing, it's Kenji Okazaki against Jim Epler, and Okazaki has lane choice. Let's go to Steve at the far end.
Al Hoffman comes off the porch to play with the big dogs at 5:17.
Yeah, we're going the right way now. It's been a long time. So you're Steve Evans, right? It's been a long time since I talked to you. But we're having fun today, and see if we can repeat and maybe give John a hard time here.
What a great race that's going to be. Meanwhile, in the Top Fuel pits, this is Scott Coletta's crew preparing to face Pat Austin in the Top Fuel semifinal. We'll be back with more from Indianapolis Raceway Park after this.
280 seemed out of reach. It's Joe Amato and Autolite who punch it. The ball goes to
290. Connie Coletta and Autolite smash it. 300. The barrier. Kenny Bernstein and Autolite shatter it. Autolite and the Record Breakers. Wow! I feel good! We feel pretty good about that.
Never thought about transmission wear? Time to shift mental gears. Use Autotrans in your automatic transmission or Man-Trans if you have a manual. 2 special treatments from Slick 50, the transmission wear protector.
Maguire's, simply brilliant.
If they're not Mopar parts, even if they say they'll fit and look like they'll fit, the question is, will they really fit? Mopar, the only parts made precisely for Chrysler Corporation vehicles, installed by the dealer. It's the only way to be sure. For Mopar parts and service, see your local Chrysler Corporation dealer.
In IndyCar racing, when it rains, we don't race on super speedways. But we're running this IndyCar on Goodyear Eagle GSC street radials to prove a point. What's the point? Outstanding wet traction. Eagle GSC, only from Goodyear.
Emmitt Smith, NFL superstar. The league's leading rusher the last 2 seasons. Super Bowl champion. And now, a holdout. A bitter contract dispute with Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones even has him threatening retirement. OJ has the story Sunday on NFL Live, followed by great football action.
Welcome back to the U.S. Nationals, and this is our first look at the pro stock class. This is Scott Jeffreyon, the second qualifier, facing Lewis Worden in the semifinal. Jeffreyon in the near lane, Worden in the far lane.
And unlike the top fuel exits and funny cars, these are the gear jammers. You just don't stand on the throttle. And here you can see that Warren Johnson has more than a dominant points lead, 12,930 to 95.84 for Scott Jeffreyon. The real fight in the points is between Scott and Warren's son Kurt to see who ends up second. They don't want it to be a sweep for the Johnson family, if you know what I mean.
Lewis Worden being guided back into position, and as Frank told us earlier, for some unknown reason, this guy always seems to do well at the U.S. Nationals. Scott Jeffreyon, he's the number 2 qualifier. He beat Joe Lapone and Jim Yates to get to the semis.
And you'll be on board with Scott Jeffreyon here in the Dodge Daytona. See his right hand on the shifter. There's actually 4 levers they pull in the 5-speed. 2,350 pounds, 500 cubic inches maximum. Racing gasoline, the most competitive class in all of NHRA drag racing. Well, you guys at home won another one. Scott Jeffreyon goes into the final round with a sizzling 7:17 at 192 miles an hour. This is the perfect racetrack for that short wheelbase Dodge Daytona. It gets all the grip it needs.
Well, here we go. Johnson and Johnson. There's Warren Johnson doing a burnout. And in the opposite lane, Warren's son, Kurt. These are not team cars. These guys go hard at each other. This will be the 7th time these two have gone head-to-head, and the old man doesn't give anything. Kurt has won only 1 time in national event competition. As these two prepare to do battle, we have one in the finals, and Steve Evans is with Scott Jeffreyon at the far end.
Well, Scott, you have been on your game today, a 7:17.
Well, it's not me as much as it is these guys from Wayne County and Mopar. They're behind me. They give me this rocket ship to drive, and I couldn't be more fortunate to be letting the clutch out on this little Mopar Parts Dodge Daytona.
You're going to race a Johnson in the final. Anyone you'd prefer?
Oh, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to run my race, and hopefully we'll come out with a win light at the other end of this racetrack. I'm really happy, Steve.
Well, we know Jeffreyon's going to face a Johnson in the final. Kurt Johnson moving into position to face his father, Warren.
When Scott has time to think about it, I think he'll root for Warren because he is involved in that points battle for the 2nd position with his son, Kurt. Warren Johnson, they call him the Professor. And let me tell you, there's a lot of knowledge in that head. Kurt Johnson, he has learned almost everything that his father knows. As you said, they've raced 6 times and the score is 5-1, so he's got a little bit more to go.
Almost everything is the key word here.
Oh, it's a beauty.
Father or son?
It is Warren winning it. Kurt was first off the starting line, but his pop punched him out with performance at 7:16, 193 miles an hour. And we have a classic final set up, Oldsmobile against Dodge.
Here's the pairing for the Pro Stock Final. It'll be Warren Johnson, who has lane choice against Scott Jeffrey on. The lane choice wasn't by much, 15 thousandths of a second. Moving along now to the Top Fuel semifinal. This is Doug Herbert burning out, facing Kenny Bernstein. Dale Armstrong and crew had to replace a motor. You remember he went up in flames in the last round, but Bernstein is now ready. As these two prepare, here's Steve with Warren Johnson, who's in the Pro Stock Final.
Hey, that boy you raised had a couple of hundreds right off of the mark you had to make up for.
Oh, yeah, you know he was going to take every shot he could. You know, I had a slight performance advantage, but, you know, those kids.
You now have lane choice by 100th of a second as well.
Well, I don't think there's really a whole lot of difference in lanes. NHRA has done a pretty good job on this track today, given the fact we had a little bit of rain and so forth, but we're happy to be there.
Young man, I'd like to say something to you here.
Family feud number 9, I guess you get that one.
These guys are counting match races and everything else when they go head-to-head. Top Fuel now, Bernstein against Herbert.
Kenny Bernstein may have a question mark behind him in the engine bay. He wants to continue winning with Eddie Hill out. There's a points harvest to be had. Look to your left. Kenny Bernstein is, and he sees Doug Herbert come by. Herbert goes to the final at 4.92 seconds, 293 miles an hour. Bernstein was so close. He was first off the starting line, just didn't have the performance.
Here's the replay, and you can see just what kind of a difference it makes to be first off the starting line. Bernstein with the early edge, but at the finish, you'll be able to see just what 1/100th of a second looks like as Doug Herbert comes from behind to just nip Kenny Bernstein and spoil his 49th birthday party at the U.S. Nationals. So for the second year in a row, Doug Herbert is in the finals at the U.S. Nationals, and he's with Steve.
Going to the final round again.
How about that? You know, this morning I wouldn't have bet $1 on myself, I guess. And
I wouldn't either.
yeah, you know, I don't know what to say. I mean, these guys are the best that there is, and when you beat them, it really makes you feel good.
From the last man in the field to the first man in the final. Meanwhile, Kenji Okazaki doing work on his own car. He's getting ready for Jim Epler in the funny car semifinal. We'll have that when we come back on NBC.
Sunday at 8, 7 Central. Adventure for the entire family. The premiere of Sea Quest. It's a fight for control of the oceans.
Pirate farm. Delta 4 settling into an attack position.
Sound collision. The epic adventure is almost here. Sea Quest premieres Sunday at 8, 7 Central on NBC.
It's clearance time at your Northwest Ford dealers. You have one last chance to get a great deal on the best-selling 93 F-Series truck. One last chance to save on Ford's best-selling compact truck, the Ranger. Or save on Ford's popular 93 Explorer, the vehicle that's equally at home in the city or the country. But this is your last chance, because after this sale, these 93s are history. So see your Northwest Ford dealer today.
Only at Tom Peterson.
And Glorious too. Portland's best bedding buy.
Only $267, and here's what you get.
Queen frame.
Queen box.
Queen innerspring mattress.
Queen mattress pad.
2 queen sheets.
2 pillows and cases.
Plus your choice of headboards.
White.
Black.
Oak.
Brass.
11 pieces. $267.
Buy it today.
We'll deliver it today.
Plus free haul away.
That's Tom Peterson.
And Glorious too.
It's a big deal when hot and cool connect.
Hot eats, cool treats, a Dairy Queen.
Want a bargain? Get a move on to Dairy Queen for the 3-for-all, only $2.99. Get a 1/3 pound deluxe double cheeseburger. Add an order of golden fries and a big 21-ounce soft drink. Put them all together, and you've got a 3-for-all for just $2.99 now at Dairy Queen.
Hot eats, cool treats, we treat you right.
Catch the best women golfers in the world today at 3 on Channel 8.
Welcome back to Indianapolis Raceway Park. I'm Brian Hammond, Steve Evans, Frank Hawley. Happy to bring you the U.S. Nationals on NBC Sports World. Huge crowd on hand here today, and boy, they're getting quite a show. There's one right in front of them that's about to take place. The 14th qualifier, Pat Austin. Austin is doing better than he has all season long, and earlier Steve Evans may have found one of the reasons why he's doing so well.
The chassis under Pat Austin's top fuel dragster was built in-house at Walt Austin Racing by certified chassis builder Dave Jeffers. It has no suspension, like all the rest of the top fuel dragsters, and it is designed to flex, also like the rest of the field. But Dave Jeffers came up with a neat little slip joint here, where this tube can actually slide in this tube for more weight transfer and better traction. He also put in a couple of diagonals here and over here that most cars don't use. Well, this morning, they'd tried everything else. They thought, what the heck, maybe we'll get more traction if we cut those diagonals out. So if Pat Austin wins the U.S. Nationals, his most valuable tool may have been a saw.
In the world of computers, engineers, and aerodynamicists, the saw is still very valuable.
That's right. It may have limbered up that car enough for a little better elapsed time. Well, something worked, including the driver. Pat Austin wins it on a hole shot. Coletta will be sick. Austin runs 491 to Coletta's 488.
Great job from the driver, great job from the crew chief and the car. What do you think?
Well, I feel real good, and Pat's really on today. And once we got the clutch working, his reaction times have came back, and the crew's just doing a fantastic job. We got the no-name crew over there, and they're learning the game.
You know, it's interesting, Brian. Pat Austin, in that he runs a sportsman car as well as his top fuel car, gets twice the seat time of any other driver, and there it pays off.
Austin wins it with the hole shot. And how about Scott Coletta running the lowest ET of the day at 488? But Austin with a 491 wins it, and he's pulling away. 293.82 the speed for Pat Austin compared to 284.62 for Scott Coletta.
That's right. Reaction time and top end charge proved to be a deadly combination.
So the final is now set for top fuel, and we've got Pat Austin, who hasn't been in the final since very early this year against Doug Herbert. This will be his third final, and he won at Columbus. Now we go to the funny car action, the semifinal round, and Kenji Okazaki pulls his car into place against Jen Epler.
And so typical of the American sports fan. The further Kenji goes, the underdog, the more this crowd here gets behind him. Can he do it? Can he go to the finals?
Not if Jim Epler has anything to say about it.
Epler almost hits the wall, but Kenji Okazaki wins it. A career best performance of 5.19 seconds. The car slows to only 270 miles an hour. You may have seen the blower belt come off it just before it reached the finish line.
Epler had the hole shot. He also ran 291 miles an hour, 21 miles an hour faster than Kenji Okazaki, but Okazaki made it up in the middle of the racetrack to win the race with a 5:19. Epler ran a 5:22, and look how close he gets to the wall. And if Okazaki's blower belt would have come off just any sooner, Epler would have won the race. Okazaki's going to a final, and he's with Steve.
Can you believe this? You're going to the final round of the U.S. Nationals.
Sure I do. I'm happy.
The blower belt is off this car, and it still ran a 19, 5:19.
Really? That's the first team. That's good.
Okay, what about the final? Chances are you'll race John Force, you think?
50-50. That's what I said.
I agree.
Thank you.
We'll find out who his opponent is when we come back.
Craftsman Motorsports.
It's a round world, genuine and true. It keeps on spinning and you always come through. And you're giving it your best. Proud to be your bud. Budweiser. Proud to be your bud. Proud to be your bud. Ooh, yeah. Proud to be your bud.
Imagine this is a sidewall of a tire. The whole idea is to keep the tread area in level contact with the road, or you'll lose traction, especially in cornering. Now, Goodyear has learned a lot in Turn 1 at Indy and applied that knowledge to Eagle street radials. In cornering, there's a lot of force trying to lift the tire, but Goodyear Eagle's racing-inspired sidewall design works to hold the tire firmly to the road. Eagle radials, only from Goodyear. We like to say the best tires in the world have Goodyear written all over them.
We're behind the Slick 50 racing team all the way, but then so is most everyone else. Now your car can have the same premium engine protection that's helping Slick 50 become a NASCAR winner. For the car you drive, for the way you drive. Slick 50, high performance engine for you.
Next Saturday, one of college football's greatest rivalries is renewed when the Fighting Irish battle Michigan State. Notre Dame football is home on NBC.
We're back at Indianapolis Raceway Park. It's getting to be crunch time in the 39th running of the U.S. Nationals. This is Pat Austin's crew doing the work on his top fueler as he gets ready to face Doug Herbert in the final. Now we're ready for the semifinal run in funny car between John Force and this is Al Hoffman.
Neither of these drivers has ever won the U.S. Nationals. And I agree with Kenji Okazaki's handicapping. I think this is a pick-em deal. Al Hoffman proved in the second round that he could run with force. His wife, Helen, certainly thinks so. You're on board with John. The final OK sign from his crew chief, Austin Coyle. A pressure-packed semifinal round in Indianapolis. John Force squeaks by Hoffman, a 5:15 to a 5:16 in one of the best drag races of this or any other U.S. Nationals. Force 286, Hoffman 287.
Force got a slightly better start than Hoffman, but it's virtually a dead heat all the way down the racetrack. Watch Hoffman in the far lane. This may be where he lost the race. He may have lost a little bit of traction. He just drifts out of the groove, and Force wins by 29 thousandths of a second at the finish to advance to the final. Force will now face Kenji Okazaki, a huge underdog, the 14th fastest qualifier. Now let's go down to Steve Evans, who is with John Force, who is one step closer to his dream of winning the U.S. Nationals.
John, you and Hoffman really put on a show there, a 15 to a 16.
I am going to keep my mouth shut. I told Coyle on the burnout backing up, I said, this thing is too gorilla. The sun come out a little bit. She's going to smoke the heaps. He's going to dance through here. They told, we're going to need it for old Hoffman. Let me tell you something. 500 feet, she's hunting. He's out the window. 800 feet, that son of a gun's out the window. She trucked right into the light. I didn't know who won. I was yelling at Bernie, talk to me. They wouldn't tell me.
You know who you're racing the final?
Japan.
I don't know who's harder to understand, John Force or Kenji Okazaki. Now the final in pro stock. This is Warren Johnson preparing to face Scott Jeffreyon.
Warren, of course, could win this for the second year in a row, but it's Scott Jeffreyon's moment. Scott Jeffreyon has been in a position to win several times this year, and his reaction times will let him down, or some minor part. He needs to perform for this team. Earlier, Frank Hawley had a chance to talk to crew chief Dave Hutchins.
It's a big hill to climb, both for your team, mechanical performance, and also emotionally for your driver. Tell me a little bit about it.
Well, we've been in quite a few finals, and we have to find a way to win. It has to come from within inside all of us. He's got to really dig down. He's got to dig down harder this round than he's ever dug down. I'm going to let Scott win this race. And we're going to give him a good platform to win from. And we have to win this race.
That puts a lot of weight on that young man's shoulders, and you can see it in his face.
Absolutely. Scott Jeffreyon, the make or break moment in a pro stock career could be on the line. They're both pre-staged, neither one in a hurry to make that final move. Both would like the stage last. Warren Johnson breaks first. Jeffreyon is up to the pressure. He leaves first. Jeffreyon is right there. Through no fault of Scott Jeffrey on Warren Johnson, and the Oldsmobile win the U.S. Nationals back-to-back. 7:16, 193 miles an hour.
There's no question this is the race of the day so far. They both get outstanding starts, but Jeffrey was just a little bit faster at the start, and that gave him the early lead. At mid-track, Warren Johnson creeps from behind and just barely nips Scott Jeffrey on. This is what 1/1000th of a second looks like as Warren Johnson wins his second consecutive U.S. Nationals championship. Here's Steve with the win.
That was one of the closest Pro Stock finals in history. A thousandth of a second between you two.
Ah, perfect. It really hurts them then.
I've never seen you this pumped up.
Oh, to win a second one in a row, I mean, this is the greatest thing. I mean, this GM Performance Parts, Ray Best's Oldsmobile, and we're so damn happy. I can't believe it.
We're happy for you, Warren.
Oh, thanks.
And Warren Johnson lengthens his already huge lead in the Pro Stock point standings with this win. After 14 of the 18 races complete, he's well on his way to his second national championship.
And back at the funny car pit's an interesting comparison. That is John Force's camp. You can see that monster truck and trailer, a spare car up in the attic, every part and piece you can possibly imagine. Contrast that to the Kenji Okazaki Big Jim Dunn operation. Everything they've got it fit in Force's air-conditioned lounge.
Inside your smooth-running engine is a torture chamber. And under these grueling conditions, only one leading motor oil in every grade meets the world's toughest requirements for viscosity breakdown. Castrol. Castrol provides maximum protection against viscosity and thermal breakdown. So use Castrol. Why make things tougher on your engine? Castrol GTX, engineered for today's smaller cars.
Try Castrol Super Clean for tough, greasy jobs. If it won't come clean with Super Clean, it won't come clean.
When 280 seemed out of reach, it's Joe Amato and Autolite who punch it. The wall goes to 290. Connie Coletta and Autolite smash it. 300, the barrier. Kenny Bernstein and Autolite shatter it. Autolite and the Record Breakers. Wow, I feel good. We feel pretty good about that.
Being on a professional race crew is one of the world's most exciting jobs. The action, the drama, the glory. But best of all, you get to play with all the Craftsman tools you've ever dreamed of. Oh, yeah! 1,600 Craftsman hand tools, the official tools of NASCAR, NHRA, and IndyCar racing. Only at Sears.
Sunday, a blockbuster NFL doubleheader. First, Montana meets Moon when the Chiefs battle the Oilers. Then a rematch of last year's Super Bowl. Jim Kelly and the Buffalo Bills will be out for revenge when they battle Troy Aikman and the world champion Dallas Cowboys. The NFL on NBC, Sunday.
This is the NBC Sports Prudential Update. Now, Hannah Storm.
Hi, everybody. Busy afternoon in the world of sports, and we start with college football, the best matchup of the day featuring number 3, Michigan, hosting 11th-ranked Notre Dame, and an NCAA record crowd of almost 107,000 on hand watching the Irish get off to a quick start on their opening drive. Irish quarterback Kevin McDougall keeps it on the option and scampers 43 yards for the first of 2 touchdown runs as Notre Dame quickly takes a 7-0 lead. In the second quarter, the Irish up 10-3. Chris Stapleton's punt is taken by Mike Miller at the Notre Dame 44. And Mike Miller is a guy that many project to be the next Rocket Ismail. He looked quite rocket-like on this return. Picking his way through the middle, takes it all the way back for a 56-yard touchdown. Notre Dame goes up 17-3 and goes on to win 27-23 in a losing effort. Heisman candidate Tyrone Wheatley had 318 all-purpose yards and 2 touchdowns. Next weekend, the Irish host Michigan State on NBC. FSU in its home opener against ACC foe Clemson. Second quarter, Florida State backup Danny Cannell gets a little mixed up there, finally lining up behind his center, and then he finds tight end Lonnie Johnson. Johnson Great touchdown run, slips a couple of tackles, heads for the end zone, and rumbles his way in for the first of his 2 touchdowns on the day. Florida State on the way to a 57-0 shellacking of Clemson. Clemson's worst loss in 62 years and first shutout since 1979. At Vanderbilt Stadium, all-purpose threat David Palmer had a Bama record 217 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns to beat the Doors. In Chapel Hill, Carolina got a big afternoon from its rushing tandem of Curtis and Leon Johnson, who combined for 269 yards rushing and 4 touchdowns. The Heels host Florida State next weekend. In Provo, it's BYU finally getting a win over Hawaii in a tougher-than-expected contest. Receiver Eric Drage tying a school record with his 25th career touchdown. And in Lincoln, Calvin Jones' replacement redshirt freshman Damon Benning had 127 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns as the Huskers beat Texas Tech. In Boulder, Buffs receiver Charles Johnson, a big afternoon, had 3 touchdown catches as Colorado beat Baylor. And at Razorback Stadium, Arkansas's go-ahead touchdown was Oscar Malone's 2-yard run as they lead South Carolina by a point. In Norman, 5 Aggie players, of course, receiving NCAA suspensions yesterday, and a shocker right now as Oklahoma is shutting out A&M 20-0. In Happy Valley, the Trojans make their first trip to Penn State, where Brian O'Neill has had 2 touchdown runs to give the Nittany Lions the lead. And at Stanford Stadium, Steve Stenstrom of the Cardinal, 3 touchdown passes as they are tied with John Ralston's San Jose State team. All right, a big day of action also at the U.S. Open. The men's semis and the women's final all taking place today at Flushing Meadows. And so far, the surprise of the tournament has been Cedric Pioline of France, the number 15 seed. He beat unseeded Wally Masur in 4 sets to reach tomorrow's final. He's never won a pro tournament, but he'll play the winner of the second semifinal between Pete Sampras and Alexander Volkov. Now, the women's champ for the 3rd time at the U.S. Open, none other than Steffi Graf, the top seed. She ended the upset run of 12-seeded Helena Sukova with a straight sets win, 3-3. Now, moving to baseball, a couple of afternoon games with pennant race implications. We start in Toronto, where the Blue Jays hosted the Angels. Toronto was already up 1-0 in the first when Joe Carter had the big blow. He takes Hilly half the way over the left field wall, a 3-run shot, and Carter's 30th home run of the year. Toronto scoring 7 in the first. They cruise to the victory, and they are now up 1.5 games over the Yankees and 2 over Baltimore. Elsewhere in the American League, Boston is sinking fast. They dropped 7 games behind Toronto with a loss to the Cleveland Indians. And at the stick, the Giants in a virtual tie with the Atlanta Braves for first place in the National League West. They trail the Cardinals now 3-1. A quick reminder for you also about our NFL coverage tomorrow. Great day here on NBC. It starts with NFL Live at 12:30 Eastern. O.J. Simpson talks with Emmitt Smith. And then a terrific doubleheader. Most of you will see Kansas City and Houston in our early game, Montana and Moon. Game 2, a rematch of Super Bowl 27 with the Bills visiting the Cowboys. That's all the time we have. Again, Notre Dame dashing Michigan's hopes, perhaps, of a national championship this season. Right now, let's head back to the NHRA US Nationals.
This is NBC's Sports World, and today it's brought to you by Castrol GTX, engineered for today's smaller cars, by Mopar Parts and the Chrysler Plymouth, Dodge Truck, Jeep and Eagle dealers who sell and install them, by Meguiar's, the trusted surface care expert since 1901, and by Craftsman, a line of 1,600 hand tools made in America, guaranteed forever, only at Sears.
We are now ready for the funny car final between John Force and Kenji Okazaki. And Okazaki's got a serious problem here, Steve.
Oh, that is a major fuel leak. And I don't think it's the kind of a problem you can just tie a rag off and pass that by the starter buster couch. No, in fact, the word goes out to shut off Kenji Okazaki. What a sinking feeling for him. What a rush of adrenaline for John Force. His dream has come true. He can't now lose the U.S. Nationals. Frank Hawley is with car owner Jim Dunn. What's the story on the leak?
This isn't where you want to be standing right now. I know that happened, Jim.
Oh, we lost a valve, which changed all the wires and the air lines, but it broke one of the fuel lines going to the computer, and when we fired it up, we didn't have enough time to warm it up in the pit, so.
You guys got nothing to be embarrassed about. You did a great job today.
Thank you very much.
So here's John Force finally going to realize his lifelong dream to win the U.S. Nationals, but is it going to be anticlimactic for him?
There is nothing anticlimactic with John Force. You heard earlier his affection for the fans. He knows all these people wanted to see a 2-car race, so he is going to give them the most spectacular 1-car race that he possibly can. That was Austin Coyle, the brake sign there with his hands. That tells Forrest that he has a single run. There'll be no pressure staging. He could sit there and wait 4 or 5 seconds or all day after the green light comes on. He could, oh, and there is Kenji Okazaki coming up to watch John Forrest make a single run. You're with him. The final lap of the U.S. Nationals for John Forrest. Oh, my. Oh, look at the flames. John Forrest, track record, low elapsed time of the event. Kenji Okazaki would have faced a 5:10, and he gives Forrest an ovation. And what a nice moment right here. The starter, Buster Couch, who made the decision to shut him off, they embrace. Frank?
Any way you can get him, Austin, but you did it in grand performance, low ET.
Well, we knew the conditions were going to be better here for the final. We had to make a little motor change, no big deal for us, and you know, we proved what we could do. It's a shame that Dunn couldn't give us a run in that round, but I suppose the outcome wouldn't have been much different.
We have one race left, the final in Top Fuel. This is Doug Herbert facing Pat Austin. Now, 2 years ago, Austin lost the race at this point when he popped the blower, but not this year. Here's Steve, the man who has realized his dream.
The biggest payday of your life.
Only in America can you make 110 grand in one day in an Oldsmobile. Wax Shop, Dorman, Castro GTX, all our people, Framon Light, Mallory, Krager, Goodyear. America.
Give me that
America.
mic back. Fantastic, John.
Steve's a brave man, giving John Force an open microphone. Force has all but wrapped up his third championship with a huge lead now on Cruz Pedregon. Etchells, Hoffman, and Hoover round out the top 5 in the point standings.
And this is John Forrest's 9th win of the season. And now the celebration gets serious. His daughters, Ashley, Brittany, Courtney, Adria, everybody sharing Dad's moment. But we've got one more huge moment between two guys, both of whom are 28 years of age, both driving the family car, both of whom have been runner-up at this event, both of whom have topped 300 miles an hour. It's Doug Herbert and Pat Austin, both of whom smoked the tires. It is Austin that recovers first. He bangs another blower, but this time in victory. The times don't matter. The celebration belongs to the Austins. And a very personal triumph for Pat Austin. Who could forget the whole shot victory over Scott Coletta? That's what did it.
Take a look at it again. Both drivers got off to great starts, but both of them smoked their tires, and at this point, it's who can backpedal the best. And it's Pat Austin who gets enough traction, gunning it a couple of times to get across the finish line. It's a strange race, but it's the first win this year for Pat Austin, his first U.S. Nationals title in Top Fuel. Pat Austin wins the U.S. Nationals in strange fashion. Here's Steve with the winner.
What a season saver this is.
This really means something. I mean, you know, we've been struggling, but we've been surviving. I hope nobody's forgot about us, but we've been surviving. The Castrol Syntec Dynamax Red Wing Cheese Oldsmobile is still here, and I'm just glad to be surviving in Indy. I mean, you win Indy, you've won the premier event, and that's just with my hat off to my crew, my family. They are the premier people of today, and I just love being with them. Thank you very much.
Brian?
Congratulations to Pat Austin and that family. What a huge win today at Indianapolis Raceway Park. Here's a look at the Top Fuel